Hello, my name is Keshwani. That's Keshwani, Keshwani. We are here because we want to improve our English. We want to improve our vocabulary. Yesterday was our day number 35, and for those of you who have been watching these videos for a while now, you know the system that we have. At the end of every 5 days we have a quiz. Since last day was the day number 35, that means today is a quiz day. Quiz number 7. Quiz number 7. And just to remind you what we do here in the quiz, I do not go into the details of the words. I'm not going to give you a detailed meaning of the word because it is after all a quiz, just to see if you learned the words. Nor am I going to spend the time to give you the pronunciation of the words and so forth. It's going to be quick. So let's start then. Day number 31. The very first word we learned on day 31 was infer. Again, when you hear the word, if you want to pause the videos, come up with the meaning of your own, on your own, that is, not of your own, the meaning on your own, and then see how you did. What does it mean to infer? It means to draw a rational and logical conclusion. A rational, logical conclusion. Infer, which is a verb. The noun would be inference, and the adjective would be inferential. The next word we dealt with was conjecture. The difference between an inference and a conjecture is that the conjecture is based on, it is an inference, but it is based on incomplete or inconclusive evidence. Incomplete or inconclusive evidence. So therefore this is a stronger word. An inference is stronger than a conjecture, because conjecture is almost like a guess, but not a wild guess. Obviously it's an educated guess based on the evidence that you have, but the evidence is not complete. The evidence may be leading you to a certain conclusion, but the evidence is not complete. You cannot be 100% sure of what you're saying. There is always a chance that you might be wrong at the end. Whereas an inference is a rational, logical conclusion. For example, the example that we talked about was, if A is more than B and B is more than C, then based on these two statements, if we know these two facts, then based on these two facts, we can infer that C has to be less than A. And that's it. Another word we learned, the third word we learned that day was, let's see where we can put it. The third word we learned was surmise. Surmise and conjecture are synonyms. They mean the same thing. Surmise and conjecture. Let's go on then. And then after that we learned the word deduce. Which means to reach a conclusion by reasoning, usually from general to specific. Usually from general to specific. So if I'm standing outside a school and I see the first boy comes out with a blue tie, necktie, and the second boy comes out with a blue necktie, and third one, I can safely deduce that the next boy, and for that matter all the boys probably, will have the same uniform, because there's a pattern there. From general, I made a general observation, and then I make a specific observation that the next boy will probably be wearing the same attire that I saw in the previous 5 boys. Or for that matter, the silly example, because when you're deducing, you're not going to be, sometimes you might end up making a wrong deduction. We'll learn the word, we'll come to word deduction anyway. So the example that I gave you was a silly example when I was doing the video on day 31, was that from a general to specific. And the example that I was being silly was that all dogs have 4 legs. My cat has 4 legs, therefore my cat is a dog. That would be a silly deduction, but deduction nonetheless. So this is deduce. The second word we learned was deduct, which means to reduce or to lessen. The noun for deduce and deduct, the noun for both is deduction. It's very important that you understand that. So when you see the word deduction, you have to figure out from the context, that is how it is being used. On day number 32, that was the end of day number 31. On day number 32, on day number 32, the very first word we learned was recapitulation. It is a mouthful, recapitulation, and a lot of the time people do not know what that word means, even though they use this word quite often, and they are able to recognize it in its abbreviated form. And the abbreviated form of the word is recap. When people say recap, recap is not a real word. It's not a real word. It is an abbreviation of the real word recapitulation, which simply means to summarize. Recap, to summarize, to provide an overview, to provide an overview. I don't like this marker. This marker is too thick and it doesn't write very well. What else does it mean? And then we learn the word synopsis, and abstract. As you noticed just now, which is precisely why I make a habit every single time to put the pronunciation of the word, because as I've explained to you many times, being a non-native speaker, if you do not make that habit of putting the pronunciation next to every single word that you learn, many a times you'll end up making a mistake. Like I just did. But of course I knew immediately what the correct pronunciation was because I have it right here. And if you want to learn the pronunciation, as I said, go to day number 32 and watch the video for that day, because right now I'm just doing a quick quiz. Synopsis, abstract. They all mean to summarize. That was it. The next word that we learned after recapitulation was we had the word capitulation or recapitulation, and then what I did after that was to make sure that you understand and to make sure that you do not confuse the word recapitulation with the word capitulation. They have nothing to do with each other, nothing at all. So what does it mean to capitulate? To capitulate means to surrender, to yield, to give in, to resign, relinquish. Relinquish has a Q in it, and every time I want to spell it as G. Relinquish. Now listen, you have no reason and you have no right to complain right now that you cannot read my handwriting, because there is nothing here that you should be looking at it for the very first time. If you have trouble understanding what this word is, and if you cannot figure out what I wrote just now, the spelling of it, go and watch the video. You should not be doing the quiz without actually having watched and learned all the words on day number 32. And if you learn all the words that we learned on day number 32, then you should be able to recognize what this word is. It's relinquish. That was the end of it. The next word we learned was seed. C-E-D-E, seed. It simply means to surrender or to give up possession of something. Something, ST stands for something, right here. To give up a possession of something means to cede. And after the word cede, the next word we learned was secede. What does it mean to secede? Well, secede means to formally break off from a country to form a new one. Secede means to formally break off a territory from a country to form a brand new country. That's what it means to secede. And I do not know when people might end up watching this video, a few months, a few years down the road. So I'm going to put the today's date, which I usually don't do. Today is July 11th. July 11th, 2011. And for those of you watching outside the US, I shouldn't have put it like this, because in the US we put the month first and then the day. July 11th, 2011. And the reason I'm putting the date here is because just in the last few days, I don't know the exact date, maybe it was the 1st of July, or maybe it was the 7th or 8th or 9th of July, somewhere in the last few days, a country by the name of South Sudan the southern part of the country Sudan in Africa broke off and became an independent separate country. It secede, to formally break off from a country to form a new country. And the noun is, I should not open my mouth like this because I did not write down the noun. The noun is cessation. I just had to look it up to see how it's spelled because I don't have it written down. And I'm so paranoid about my spelling ability that I do not want to put it there on the blackboard without having made sure that it is correct first. There you go. The noun is, where should we put it? Cessation. So, the southern part of Sudan broke off, it seceded, there was a secession, and it became a new independent country. It's called South Sudan. So now we have Sudan and then we have South Sudan, as opposed to just Sudan. It's seceded to become an independent country. Another example I gave you when I was doing the video on day 32 was from Canada. There's a part of Canada, the French-speaking part of Canada, namely Quebec, where a large percentage of the population actually want to secede to form their own independent French-speaking country, separate from Canada. They did not succeed because last time, we're digressing here big time, because the last time they had a referendum, it did not get the majority. I think it was like 49%, didn't quite make it. But anyway, that's what it means to secede. Let's go on then. The next word was, well, that was it. That's the end of day number 32. Let's go to day number 33. For a while, there was something in the news a few years ago that some northern part of the US, I think it was Maine or Vermont or something, where there were some people who were trying to secede from the US. And I also heard of people in Texas wanting to secede, but that's what it means. To break off from the part of the country that you are right now, to make an independent, separate country. Day number 33. The very first word we learned on day number 33 was abdicate. Now abdicate was the word that I wanted to actually cover on day number 32, and I had inadvertently left out. And if you do not know how to spell inadvertently, do not worry, you are in good company, because neither do I. Don't say accidentally. Don't say I left it out accidentally. The word is inadvertent. And we'll learn it one of these days. The spelling, pronunciation, and meaning and everything. I think my spelling is way far off right now. Yes, it is. It's not right. It happens every single time where a word crops up in the discussion and I want to introduce that word, and I always end up making a fool of myself because I never know how to spell the bloody things. I'm not a good speller, so we're having a second go. Having a second go means to try again. I retyped it and see if it shows up now. And if it still doesn't show up, then there you go. Where should we put it? Just put it in a red marker so it's easier for you to see. We'll cover it in the future. Inadvertent. Inadvertent means you did it not on purpose. It means to do something not on purpose. You did not mean to do it. You did it without actually meaning to do it. So what I was saying here is that this was the word, abdicate was the word that I wanted to cover it on day number 32, but I left it out inadvertently, not on purpose, because abdicate makes sense. The words that we were talking about for day number 32, we were dealing with the words which have to do with giving up something, giving up a possession of something, giving up a position, giving up power, giving up title. We learned cede, we learned secede, we learned capitulate, which means surrender, and therefore abdicate is related to those words. Abdicate means to give up, namely to give up your throne or your title. It means to give up throne or crown. Or generally speaking, it also means to give up a position of power or title. So this is a more loose meaning of the word. This is a more broad meaning of the word abdicate. Generally, the word abdicate is meant to use when one is describing situations where one is dealing with having to give up one's throne. So if you have a monarch, a king or queen, and he or she is required to give up her crown, her throne, that is called an abdication. The next word we learned on day number 33 was, so now the other words that we're going to learn have nothing to do with abdicate. They're different words. The first word was Impromptu, which means to do something without pre-planning. To do something on the spur of the moment. This is an expression you probably want to learn. On the spur of the moment, if you do not know it. It just means you do it spontaneously. To do something if you're doing something spontaneously, it was not pre-planned, it was not premeditated. To do something without pre-plan, or to do something without premeditation. Meditate means to think, premeditate to think ahead of time, premeditation means to think of something ahead of time, to plan something ahead of time. So if you do something without premeditation, then it's spontaneous. It was done on the spur of the moment. On that one moment, on that particular moment, you decided to do it without having thought about it before. To do something without pre-planning. The next word we learned was extemporaneous. Extemporaneous is a synonym of impromptu. Extemporaneous, of course, is a synonym of spontaneous. So if you do something spontaneously, you're doing it. Extemporaneously, you're doing it in an impromptu manner. And the last two words we learned, which I'm not going to put on the blackboard because we already talked about it, were meditate, which means to think, and premeditate, which means to think ahead of time. So that was the end of day number 33. Let's go on to day number 34. Retort. What does it mean to retort? It means to talk back. It means to make a counter argument. So if somebody makes an argument or somebody says something and you have to make a counter argument right away, you're retorting. Retort. That was it. It just means to talk back. Then we learned vernacular and jargons. Vernaculars and jargons, of course, are synonyms, which is why I put them together, which simply means a special language, or a way of speaking of a group or a profession. A special language of a particular people, of a region, or a profession. So people talk about legal jargon. People talk about the legal vernacular. Legal jargon is how the two lawyers talk to each other. They use a lot of terminologies from the law and so forth. Yeah. The other example I gave you when we were doing the video was if the two mechanics are talking to each other about what is wrong with your car. If I'm standing in the garage and listening to them, I'm not going to understand more than half of what they're saying, because I do not understand what is what. And similarly, if two surgeons, let me give you a simple example. a mechanic goes to the doctor because something is wrong with him, and the doctor is discussing his situation, mechanic's situation, with another of his colleague, another doctor, and the two doctors are discussing what's wrong with this mechanic. The mechanic does not understand what the hell they're talking about because they're using their medical vernacular, medical jargon. The very next day, something is wrong with the doctor's car, and the same doctor takes his car to the same mechanic. And now today, that mechanic and his colleague in the garage are talking to each other about what is wrong with the doctor's car, and doctor is standing right there. The doctor has no idea what the hell they're talking about because doctor does not understand the vernacular of the mechanics. There you go. It's a special language of a given profession. Jargon, vernacular. Jargon also means a nonsensical talk. It doesn't have to be a talk which actually makes sense. It could also be a nonsensical talk. A talk that does not make much sense also means jargon. And from that, we learned the word, this was just for fun. This word was just for fun, even though it is a real word. It is spelled with a D-E or D-Y. They are both considered correct spelling. It just means a nonsense. It just means nonsense. And of course the word is gobbledygook. We talked about it because gobbledygook could be a synonym of jargon, because if the jargon is used, as I said, jargon has two meanings. Jargon means a special talk of a certain profession, or it could also mean nonsensical talk. And if it is being used in the sense of a nonsensical talk, then jargon would be a synonym of gobbledygook. And after that, while we were at it, I decided to cover one more word, which was for the benefit of the people whose first language is not English, because if you're listening to it, and if your first language is English, then the word gobble is very simple, which just means to eat. Eat or to devour, to eat, or to eat, or to devour. In a greedy manner. And finally, the last word that we learned was repartee, which is a quick reply, a quick or swift reply. But that's not enough. If it's just a quick and swift reply, if someone says to something and you talk back, if you quickly reply to something, like a child sometimes tries to wants to talk back to the parents, and when you say something to your child and the child wants to talk back, you might say to the child, do not retort. Do not retort. The word was retort, which means to talk back, or a quick, or if you like, or quick, or swift reply. Someone says something and you give a quick and a swift reply. So the question is, what is the difference between retort and repartee? Repartee is a quick and swift reply, but it's a quick or swift witty reply. That is the nuance of the two words. And for those of you who do not know the word nuance, I need to place the word was nuance. I covered it somewhere in the beginning of the whole thing. I think it was day number 1 for that matter, if I remember it correctly. The very first, it was the very first word on the very first day. If you do not know the word nuance, it's a very important word in English language. Go and watch. One means day number 1. So just type in the tag Keshwani Prep vocab day 1. The very first word that I covered on the very first day was nuance. That tells you how important the word is. Nuance is the minor, subtle differences between the two words. Although here the difference is not minor, the difference is very drastic. This is a quick and witty reply, almost in a playful manner. Well, this is just a quick talking back. Let's go on then. We were on day number 34. We are done with day 34. Let's go to the very last word, very last day, day number 35. And let's see what we covered on day 35. On day 35, we covered a whole bunch of words having to do with greed or being greedy. The very first word we learned was voracious. Which just means to consume a great amount of something. Consume great amount of something, anything, but usually it is food. But as I said before, one can be described if one reads a lot. If you know somebody who reads a lot all the time, all she does is read books, you can describe her as a voracious reader, because you consume a great deal of something. The noun of voracious is voracity. The noun of voracious is voracity. But notice the word voracity and the word voracity. These are two separate words. This one has an E, this one has an O. Voracity means truthfulness, which we'll cover later on in the time. But make sure that you understand that there exist two different words, voracity and voracity, with an O. Voracity and veracity, which means truthfulness. Voracity is the noun of voracious. The next word we learned was ravenous, which means extremely hungry or greedy. Or greedy. Let's carry on then. So we have ravenous, voracious. I need the room, so I need to erase everything. Then we had rapacious, which means greedy or plundering or looting. Rapacious. And the noun of rapacious is rapacity. But I hope you're sensing that I'm doing things in a hurry. This is not how one learns anything. I'm not teaching you right now. We're not learning any new words. As I keep repeating like parrots, this is a quiz. Presumably you have already learned these words on these days. Presumably you have already watched day number 35 and have learned all these words. This is just an overview. This is just a summary. This is just a quick recapitulation. You understand? That's why we do it in a hurry. It means to plunder. Rapacious means to be plundering, to be looting. And finally, we learned the word avarice and cupidity. The adjective of avarice is avaricious. Avaricious. And finally, we learned cupidity. They both mean greed. They all mean greed. All these words on day number 35 have to do with greedy. Being greedy or greed. Voracious, rapacious, ravenous, avarice, cupidity. They all have to do with greed. That was the end of our day number 35, and therefore that's the end of our quiz. That's it. We'll come back and pick up from day number 36. I hope you got something out of it. Keep up with it, and you will see that your vocabulary will improve little by little. It will take a few months, but it will get there. Okay, don't try to do it in a week. Don't try to do it in a week right before the exam. It doesn't work. It does not work. That's not how one learns something. Learning requires time and patience. Anyway, if you wish to get hold of me for personal private tutoring, I provide tutoring services, private tutoring for all of these tests that you see there, the GRE, the GMAT, the SAT, and the TOEFL. Go to any of these website addresses to send me an email. prep4gre.com, prep4gmat.com, prep4sat.com, or prep4toefl.com. Or you can go to keshwaniprep.com and send me an email from there. I provide private tutoring, face-to-face tutoring, one-to-one, or I also tutor over the internet via Skype or over the telephone. Alright? Thanks.